All right, guys, we have lesson 2-5. The goal of the lessons is that you are able to compare and order fractions, decimals, and percents. So decide which one is greater than, which one is less than, put them in order from least to greatest, so on and so forth. I am on page 130 in your book, and so you can open up there. Basically, we have two different ways to do this. We can either work with fractions or we can work with decimals. Depending on which you are better with, you can choose the method that works best for you. To start with comparing and ordering fractions using fractions, or thinking just about the fractions as fractions. And in order to do that, we always have to have a common denominator. Common denominators make it easy for us to make a comparison and decide which of the fractions is greater than the other. So we're going to have to rewrite some fractions, making them equivalent with the common denominator. Then we can just compare the numerator. Look at the examples in your book on page 1. Here we're taking 5/8 and comparing with 7/12. Our first step is to say that we can't compare eighths and twelfths. 5/8 is a little bit more than a half, and 7/12 is a little bit more than a half. So they're really close to each other. So we're going to change them to have common denominator. The common denominator, if you want to use the smallest, the least common denominator to make it easiest for yourself, you have to find the least common multiple of the denominators 8 and 12. And in this case, the least common denominator is 24. So over here, they've showed us how they changed 5/8 into 15/24. They changed 7/12 into 14/24. So then we can compare 15 and 14. Since 15 is greater than 14, 15/24, 5/8, is greater than 14/24, or 7/12. So we would put here then the answer in the circle would be to write the greater than symbol. Why don't you, I'll do letter A with you, and then you can try B and C in the got it's on page 130. So we have to, our first step is to change, so we have common denominators. I'm doing letter A right here. We're going to change 2/3. We're looking at 2/3 and 4/9. So I need to know what is a number that 3 and 9 both can be changed into. Since 3 can become a 9, we can use a common denominator of 9. Okay, so I'm going to change 2/3 into something over 9. I have to do my little arrows here. 3 times 3, so I'm going to do 2 times 3 and get 6/9. And then 4/9 is just 4/9. And since 6 is bigger than 4, then I know that 2/3 is greater than 4/9. So in my little circle up here, my answer is to say greater than. Why don't you pause the video, try that with letter B, find a common denominator, and compare those two fractions. All right, if you took the time to work through those, you should have found that 5/12 is less than 7/8, and 1/6 is less than 5/8. Okay, moving on to the next. So we're going to be working with common denominators still, only now we have 4 denominators that we need to use to find what they have in common. So we're going to have to be listing our multiples, doing some skip counting until we find our way to what they have, all 4 of those numbers have in common. In this example, they've already done that for you and shown us that the least common denominator is 28. So they have to change all 4 of these fractions into a fraction that has a denominator of 28. Then you can compare the numerators, 14, 18, 21, and 20, put them in order, and then go back and for your final answer, list them as their original fractions. 14/28 was 1/2. so we list 1/2 first. 18/28 was 9/14. 20/28 was 5/7, and 21/28 was 3/4. So we list them as they actually occur. So give that on the bottom of page 130. You have the fractions 1/2, 5/6, 2/3, and 3/5. So I'm going to give you some time. I want you to pause the video, but your job is to find a common denominator for each of these so that you can compare fractions that have the same denominator, and you really only have to compare the numerators. So pause the video for a minute, give it a try, see how it goes. Hopefully, possibly, you use the common denominator of 30 because we have a 5 and a 6. We have to go all the way up to 30. So this one was 15/30. 5/6 was 25/30. 2/3 was 20/30. And 3/5 is 18/30. When you put them in order then, 15/30 is the smallest, so I do 1/2. Then 18/30, that's 3/5. Then 20/30, that's 2/3. And then 5/6, 25/30, 5/6. They are now in order from least to greatest. If you like fractions, that's the method for fractions, and you don't want to do all that work with common denominators. The second method on page 131 is the method that you're going to want to use. It might be easier to compare fractions, decimals, and percents if you rewrite them. We spent all that time learning how to go from a fraction to a decimal to a percent and mixing them all around with our little triangle of conversions to make. And if you make everything into a decimal, you can compare decimals, and we don't need to worry about common denominators. This little chart on the top of page 130 has some common fractions and decimals that are used that show you the conversions for them that happen kind of a lot. You want to refer to, but you have the skills to do this. So in the first example on page 131, example number 3, we're comparing 3/4 and 0.7 or 7/10. Our goal is to change 3/4 first into a decimal. To change a fraction to a decimal, you can take the top number, divide it by the bottom number. Go ahead and use your calculator and know that then 3/4 is the same as 75/100 or 0.75. Where 7/10 is the same as 70/100. Remember, we can add as many zeros as we want. And since 75 is greater than 70, 75/100 is greater than 70/100. And so, therefore, we can fill in the circle with the greater than symbol. 3/4 is greater than. Here's another example. Lucida made 85%. Henry made 7/8, which is the better average, or which is a higher average. We're comparing 85% and 7/8. And so the first step here is that I need to change 7/8 to a decimal. Using my calculator, take the top number, divide it by the bottom number. I get 0.875 or 875 thousandths. I can put a 0 after the 0.85 because I take my percent and swoop back 2 places to change it to a decimal, 0.85, or 850 thousandths. And since 850 is less than 875, I know that 85% is less than 7/8. One more set of got it's. I'll do the first one for you. 2/3. If I take my calculator and do 2 divide by 3, I see 0.66666. It keeps going and going, or 0.6 repeating. And then if I compare 0.66666 with just 0.60000, I know that 2/3 is greater than 6/10. Go ahead and solve as many of those got it's as you think you'd like to try. Change everything to a decimal. So you're either going to take the top number, divide it by the bottom number, or if it's a percent, you're going to swoop back 2 spaces as you divide by 100. Go ahead and solve some of those got it's. Pause the video so you can check your answers. If you worked those out, you should have gotten letter F is less than, letter G is equal, letter H is less than, letter I is less than, and letter J is equal. In your book that you could work through if you would like, where we have some stories to go with it. 3 different ways to take attendance. Attendance taken as a fraction, 5 out of 8. Attendance taken as a decimal, 5/10, or attendance taken as a percent, 58.3%. The different grade levels that attended the carnival. Our goal is to just compare or list in order from least to greatest which grade had the most people. Since we have 3 different things, if we change them all to a decimal, that's what they did here, it's much easier to put them in order. They put a number line on here for you if you need help with these decimals are all really close to each other. But this here, 0.500, 500 thousandths or 5/10 is the smallest, then 583 thousandths, then 625 thousandths. So in least to greatest, it was grade 7 at 5/10, then grade 8 at 58.3%, and finally grade 6 at 5/8 carnival. Good luck. I know you're going to do great.